agenda. Shana Tova. Happy New Year. I consider myself to be a patriot. And sorry, Maury, I don't mean the football team. I love this country, and I believe in the ideals upon which it was founded. I had an outstanding role model who taught me about these ideals and to not take them for granted. My father was not born an American citizen. Born in Hungary, his family escaped shortly before the Nazi invasion and made their home in the Bronx. My father was 7 years old when he arrived in the United States. Becoming a naturalized citizen had such an impact on my dad that he knew he could never take the opportunities now available to him for granted. Education was his top priority. He learned English so quickly that within months, he was speaking fluently with no detectable accent, not even a New York accent. He loved learning anything and everything. Math and history were his favorite subjects. He even skipped a few grades along the way. He went on to attend CCNY, the City College of New York, where he met my mom and graduated in 3 years. When he got his draft notice in the mail, there was not a moment of hesitation. He was proud to serve his country. We always went to Memorial Day and 4th of July parades, and our town's bicentennial celebration was really a big deal for my dad. He never tried to get out of or even ask for a deferral for jury duty. All of this is to set the context for what comes next. As a young child, I remember accompanying my father when he went to vote. He never missed an election. It didn't matter how minor it was. It's my right and my responsibility, he would say. Back then, we'd walk up to the desk and pull the curtain all the way around us. Remember that? We'd use a stylus to punch holes in the ballot. Once I was old enough to do it very carefully, my dad would point to his choice and let me punch the hole. I felt like such a big shot. But even then, it made such an impression upon me that even today, I rarely pass up my opportunity to cast my vote in even the most minor election. As I grew older, I continued to accompany Dad to the polls, and we'd have great conversations about the candidates, about politics, and about what was at stake in each election. He taught me a few really important lessons that have stuck with me, and that I, in turn, have tried to pass on to our children as I share them with you. Remember that my father passed away in 2017 and had significant dementia before the 2016 election. Lesson 1, being an elected official is a really unpopular job to have. You can't please anyone. Therefore, we should assume that those who run for office do so because they are motivated by the best of intentions. We should assume that they love their country, state, county, etc., and will work for its best interest, even if they make decisions that we disagree with. Lesson 2. Our elected officials are, by and large, honorable people who lead with integrity. They put the needs of the people they serve before their own, and often at great sacrifice. Lesson 3. An important part of the democratic process is that sometimes the candidate you want to win does, and sometimes the candidate you don't want wins. That's okay. There is a check and balance built into our political system, and the pendulum will swing back in due time. Lesson 4, and this was the most important to me because it was derived from the other 3. Whether or not we voted for the person who won, whether or not we agreed with their positions and policies, whether or not we approve of the job they were doing, both the office and the person serving in it were to be respected and honored. I learned these lessons from the example my father set for me. Through his words and his actions over the course of 5 decades. I cannot imagine the conversations we would be having were he alive today? Would he still maintain that our elected officials are to be accorded proper respect simply by the virtue of the office they hold? Or would he change his stance and determine that in light of more recent events, that respect had to be earned? So much has changed in our society since the 2016 election that impacts our country in truly significant ways that I fear for our future. Lest you think this is a doom and gloom sermon, fear not. I'm here to share some observations, some thoughts on them, and some ideas for what you and I can do to help turn things around. Because like my father, I believe it is not only our right, but our responsibility to do so as Americans and as Jews. My first observation is that a combination of deeply partisan politics, a global pandemic that led to anywhere from a year to 2.5 years of near total isolation, and way too much time spent on social media and a loss of social skills, has resulted in a deep divide in our country. I used to be able to discuss issues with friends who have different political leanings. I no longer feel comfortable doing so. People attack each other randomly on social media. It doesn't even matter that they don't know each other. In the work environment, people have become more passive aggressive, and it has even spilled over into our social interactions. Think about your recent conversations. Have you snapped at your spouse, child, or parent lately? What did they do to deserve it? And what was your role in the incident? Have you made a thoughtless comment to a friend lately? Perhaps commented on their appearance, judged something they did or said, talked over them when they tried to share their opinion? We can all do better, every one of us. The answer isn't even that difficult. Drawing on the Jewish practice of Musar, which is working to find balance in certain moral character traits in our individual lives, the specific midot, character traits that apply here, are siyag ladvarim, guarding one's speech, and dan l'chaf zechut, judging others favorably. Let's take those one at a time, starting with the latter. If we judge others favorably, it means that we assume best intentions. If we judge others favorably, it means maybe you asked your spouse to do that one thing so many times that you feel like a broken record. I know, a reference that some of our younger friends won't understand. But if you assume best intentions, you might understand that they had a rough day at work and just can't do that one thing tonight. Or they keep getting distracted. That happens to me a lot. So they set out to do it, but ended up doing a bunch of other things, but not that one thing that you asked. Judging other things favorably allows you to put yourself in the other's place and see the situation from their perspective. Assuming best intentions, in my experience, changes the way that you respond in almost every situation. Guarding one's speech is simply another way to say, think before you speak. Before you make that comment, think how you would feel if someone made a similar comment to you. In many elementary school classrooms, you will find this poster or one very similar to it. Think before you speak. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? Is it kind? I think this is really good advice for all of us. And if we stop to think before we speak, treat each other with kindness, give each other the benefit of the doubt, and assume best intentions, we can begin to turn things around. Second observation, hatred is at an all-time high in our society. This is evident in the acts of violence against women, African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanics, and of course, Jews. To date, there have been 496 mass gun shootings in 2022 in the United States. Every morning, we wake up to the news of more local shootings, knife fights, and road rage incidents. Our children should not be afraid to go to school, and our teachers should not have to kiss their families goodbye in the morning, wondering if they will return to them that afternoon. Every single synagogue in the United States has likely participated in security training over the past month or so, and most have armed security on Shabbat and over these holy days. Some larger urban congregations have security daily. Mental health issues account for some of the violence, to be sure. However, loosening restrictions on guns, allowing open carry without permits, and allowing unrestricted access to assault weapons, coupled with the rhetoric of hate that pervades not only fringe movements, but much of the base of our political system, has led to the level of violence we are now experiencing. What's the answer? I believe part of the answer is reasonable gun legislation, better mental health care, better training for law enforcement, and better security for our schools. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. What can we do about it? I propose the following. Engage in dialogue with someone you don't know from another faith tradition, another race, another culture. Sharing traditions and culture is a first step to building bridges of understanding and breaking down hatred. If you see something, say something. If you personally experience or even see an act of anti-Semitism or hatred anywhere, report it to the Anti-Defamation League and the Jewish Community Relations Council of the Jewish Federation of San Antonio. Beginning this week, we will be including links to both the reporting section of the ADL website and to Lisa Epstein, director of our local JCRC's email in our weekly newsletter so that you can access them easily. Use your voice to say enough with thoughts and prayers. It's time for action. Put on your mask and join a protest. And if you're not comfortable doing that, write to our elected officials. I've written to them several times already, and they will keep doing so. They may not read the letters, but their staff counts how many letters they get in favor of gun legislation and how many against. Your letters make a difference. My third observation will come as no surprise to anyone here. I am deeply concerned that both our elected officials and the Supreme Court appear to be trampling over our Constitution. Freedom of religion is the most important principle upon which our country was founded. It was the reason our founding fathers came here to begin with. Freedom of religion. The first clause in the Bill of Rights states that Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Yet recent decisions have done exactly that. They have determined law based on religious reasoning that goes against both Judaism and Islam, and I'm sure other religions as well. If we are prevented from practicing our religion according to its tenets and laws, because legislators and the highest court in the land have determined that fundamentalist Christian beliefs should hold sway, then our Constitution no longer means anything. But here's the catch. The legislators are not even listening to their constituents. When polled on the recent decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, 70% of Americans disagreed with the court's decision and want abortion to remain legal under all or most conditions. The numbers regarding the case on public prayer are a little more skewed. However, the same 70% of Americans strongly favor keeping the separation of church and state and oppose the establishment of an official religion for our country. So what can we do about this? My father taught me that change happens in the voting booth. And herein lies my fourth and final observation. I know I haven't given you solutions to the last one yet, but they're tied together, so they're coming. My fourth observation is this: our democratic ideal is under assault. And I'm not talking about what's going on in Washington with the January 6th hearings. I'm talking about access to the voting booth. Texas is among more than a dozen states that are making it harder to vote come November. According to an article in the San Antonio report that came out this past Thursday, quote, conservative white office holders in both parties historically suppressed the right of Black and Mexican American voters. There are only 4 states where voting is more restricted than Texas, according to the 2022 edition of the Cost of Voting Index, a nonpartisan academic study released on September 16. Texas ranks a lowly 46 among all states for ease of voting. Only Wisconsin, Arkansas, Mississippi, and New Hampshire make it harder for citizens to register to vote and access ballots, end quote. The national study measures 10 different election-related categories, including ease of registration, voting inconvenience, poll hours, voting by mail, absentee voting, length of early voting periods, and number of voting sites. Texas comes up short on all of them. Following the most recent restrictions, the March 1st primaries saw a record 22% rejection of mail-in ballots. Previous elections saw only 2 to 3% of mail-in ballots rejected. Why has the rejection rate increased so dramatically? New restrictions make it very confusing for the average voter, let alone someone with any kind of impairment. So what can we do? I have suggestions. The first and most important is to vote. I will never tell you who you should vote for, what issues you should support. That's not my right or my responsibility. However, I do believe that we each have the responsibility to cast our vote as our conscience leads us to. I would even go so far as to urge you, if at all possible, if you cannot or don't wish to vote on election day, to vote early rather than voting by mail. I believe that the mail-in restrictions are so confusing as to be deceptive. And unless you proactively check to see if your ballot has been rejected, you won't know because they won't tell you. If you need a ride to vote early, call me. I would be delighted to pick you up and take you to an early voting location. If you are able to drive elderly friends or neighbors to vote, please make that offer to them. Offer to watch someone's children for an hour so that they can go vote. Volunteer to be a nonpartisan election protector. There's a role for everyone, whether it's helping voters from home, assisting voters in person, or tracking online disinformation. I have already registered to volunteer as a poll chaplain on election day. Finally, encourage everyone you know to vote in this election. There is so much at stake. It is not only candidates who are on the ballot in November, it is democracy itself. And we must send a clear message that democracy still matters to us. There's a story of a man who once came before the Chazon Ish, who was a 20th century rabbi, Abraham Yeshaya Karelitz, and explained that he didn't have enough money to pay his taxes, and therefore he would not be allowed to vote in an upcoming election. The Chazon Ish responded, "You should sell your tefillin and pay the taxes. Tefillin you can borrow from another, but the right to vote you cannot get from someone else." Leading American halachic authority, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, Yechono Livracha, was approached by the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York when it was conducting a voter registration campaign in October 1984 for his thoughts on the Jewish responsibility to vote. He said, "On reaching the shores of the United States, Jews found a safe haven. The rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution and Bill of Rights have allowed us the freedom to practice our religion without interference and to live in this republic in safety. A fundamental principle of Judaism is hakaras hatov, recognizing benefits afforded us and giving expression to our appreciation. Therefore, it is incumbent upon each Jewish citizen to participate in the democratic system which safeguards the freedoms we enjoy. The most fundamental responsibility incumbent on each individual is to register and to vote. Therefore, I urge all members of the Jewish community to fulfill their obligations by registering as soon as possible and by voting. By this, we can express our appreciation and contribute to the continued security of our community. Democracy is strongest when everyone participates, and it suffers when citizens are shut out from the democratic process or choose not to engage. The goal of democracy is the building of a more just and compassionate society. In a Moment magazine article in May 2016, Rabbi Yitz Greenberg wrote, "I believe that democracy is the political system most likely to advance the Torah's goal of tikkun olam, repairing the world, so that every human being is treated as an equal, valuable, and unique image of God." Ken Yehi Ratzon. May this be God's will. Hoshana Tova.